So why this topic of racial reconciliation is important to me is, for one, I'm a biracial. I'm a product of a biracial couple. I'm the son of a Mexican immigrant and the son of a gringa, or otherwise known as a white woman, right? If you don't know Spanish, that's what that means, okay? Gringa. And so I grew up in El Paso, Texas, which, if you've ever been to El Paso, it's Juarez 2.0. Another joke, but what I mean by that is just the Latin culture is such a part of El Paso, and so I grew up in a very Latin home. Spanish was my first language as a boy. We lived in Juarez for the first couple years, and we moved to El Paso, and then mother got remarried when I was a young kid, moved to Austin, and then we weren't Christians at the time. We probably would have identified as Christians, but for me, I underwent a racial identity crisis 2 times in my life. The first one is when I became a Christian, and the second one is when Michelle and I got married. Becoming a Christian. So as I mentioned, I grew up in a very Latin-infused home and environment and culture. All of the food we ate was purely Mexican food. Thanks be to the God for Mexican food, right?
Amen.
Amen. And so all of our friends were Latin descent. All of the music we listened to was Tejano, even though I couldn't stand it as a kid, but we listened to that. So that was my environment. But when I became a Christian, God, in His sovereignty, He used a predominantly white ministry to save me. It was Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Shout out to FCA. Amen. And so after becoming a Christian, going to a predominantly white ministry, and then going to a predominantly white church, it was a racial crisis for me. Like, how come, I couldn't formulate it then, but I began to think, how come I don't see my people in those churches, right? Now, it didn't dawn, I didn't push back on it. It was just an observation. But over those years, I began to think, by virtue of being in a predominantly Anglo church, that this form of Christianity was the only right form of Christianity. And so I began to look down on even minority churches because of the way they sang, right? Because of the preaching style, because of whatever. And so the standard for me was the white church.